questions on the platform, and fellow South Africans following our deliberations on this first meeting of the Portfolio Committee this year. Let me also take this as an opportunity to welcome back members to this of the committee, believing that you had adequate time to rest and regain energy to come back in 2023 re-energized and get most of the work that the committee needs to do going. Before I deal with the formalities of the meeting, in case members would have not seen this message on the Portfolio Committee platform, indicated that there were documents sent this morning with regard to the legal or litigation matters in different entities as well as the department. And I've placed it in the Portfolio Committee that given the time this has been sent, is that an issue that I'm not audible, Honorable Kolabanet?
No, indeed, Chair. I would like to comment on this issue. I have a great concern about those documents because looking through the email sent just before 7 o'clock this morning, that information was being, by the look of it, bounced around between officials from as far back as, the 6th or so of the month, and yet we only received it last night.
Recording in progress.
I just would like an explanation why the officials had all these documents, and it says there has it been sent to the study group, etc. But the members here, or certainly myself, I don't know if your ANC study group received them, but we certainly only received them literally some last night and some at 7 o'clock this morning. So why are officials sitting on these documents and not sending them to the committee, I think is the question.
I just didn't want to disrupt you, Honorable Kolabanet. I thought you wanted to say probably you can't hear what I'm phrasing. You'll still have an opportunity to make the comment, but I'm just explaining the message I've placed on the Portfolio Committee because I thought that message was in the best interest of doing our oversight work, that we get the documents on time and we process them. Of course, I'm not the whip of a party, but all I know is that the documents were sent at the same time that you received the documents, and for that reason, we've not processed the documents, and it would not be proper to proceed with such having not processed them in this regard. So I thought I should place that on record, that you would, yes, have received the documents, you can process those at your time, but what I've put on the Portfolio Committee platform is to really indicate that because there are these entities that are scheduled in the other meetings that we're going to have as a committee, we'll be able to take those matters with the entity as it comes before the committee. Of course, except for the BBI report, which we have received time, which we must deal with, and the other items that are on the agenda. I'm sure the department, because we've already made that comment, would be able to speak to that point as to why they were received only at the time that would have been received. Like I said, this is out of a discussion I've had with the committee support staff, because I got that call also around 7 in the morning. And I was concerned that that's like 2 hours before the meeting, with most of the members may not even see it because we're load shedded also at different times. and it will not help the meeting in that regard. So that's the direction I've given as the chair on handling the matter going forward. But we want to send again the message that we find it unacceptable to be receiving documents, especially in that volume, in the last minute. And I'm sure that's the matter the ministry and the department will be able to resolve. So I thought we should deal with that right in the beginning. And I'm sure once the meeting is opened, we'll fully deal with such a matter. So we can hold it at this point. So I just thought for purposes of understanding what we'll be engaged in, I should clarify that in the beginning. Members, just to dispense with the formalities so that the meeting in earnest starts. Like I've welcomed you already. I see the Deputy Minister is now on the platform. Welcome, Deputy Minister. We've acknowledged that you join the meeting at any given time, given confirmation. Honorable members were reminded of the rules on convening meetings on this platform, that at all times we must ensure that your mics are muted, video camera switched off until you are recognized by the chairperson to speak. In that case, you would unmute your mic, switch on your video camera. But in situations where there may be connectivity challenges, would indicate and ask permission from the chairperson to keep your video camera off so as to maximize the bandwidth. From time to time, there may be those that lose connectivity. As you reconnect platform, ensure at all times that your video camera is off and your mic is muted, as mics are sensitive and could pick up background sounds that may distract the speaker that may be on the platform. In terms of the rules, point of orders are allowed. However, members are guided that when you raise a point of order on this platform, you will raise your hand on the gadget. The committee support will also assist me in case I would not be able to see your hand. Only at the time you are recognized to raise point of order that you unmute and switch on your video camera and proceed to raise the point of order on which the chairperson may rule upon in terms of the rules of the National Assembly. We also advise honorable members not to raise unnecessary point of orders to a point of collapsing the meeting on this platform. Having raised that, this would also then apply to all other participants on the platform. They would engage at that point when they are recognized. Otherwise, we have to keep our mics muted and video camera off to help the proceedings of the meeting. I will at this point, having declared the meeting officially opened, first check if the quorum was confirmed, but check if there are applications for leave of absence or what is called apologies for purposes of record. Committee support.
Good morning, Chairperson. We have an apology for the Minister, Chairperson. Thank you.
So there is an apology from the Minister. However, the Deputy Minister, as I said, is on the platform to lead the department and the entity concerned politically. Deputy Minister, I want to just check whether you indeed joined at the time I explained the approach to the meeting, especially with regard to documents that members received only this morning from the different entities that will proceed with the one of the BBI is received and all other documents that the committee would have received on time for the other items. And I'm sure you'd confirm if you also heard the point already made by Honorable Kolapanatu as I was making that point. I'm doing this so that we also maximize the time that we can get to the business of the meeting. Deputy Minister.
Good morning, Honorable Chairperson, and good morning to all the honorable members on the platform. Chair, unfortunately, I was not able to pick up the point you're raising. I did send you a WhatsApp message that I've been on the platform for over 3 minutes. The host was not letting me in, so by the time I got in, I think you were at the tail end of making a submission around documents that were received late. I was communicating with the DG. I think she would be in a better position to explain the late submission of documents. So if you allow me, I would give you an opportunity to just explain why the documents were received late. I didn't pick up the other issues you raised, Chair, so if there's something that we have to respond to from the ministry, I think you'll let me know. But I thought maybe if I can allow the DG to just explain that part. Chair, if you allow me, I would invite the ADG to just speak to this item.
No, Deputy Minister, yeah, you've got the point. It was about the documents, and that would not deal with those in this meeting, but allow members to go through them. And that because we are having entities and the department scheduled on other items, members will be able to pick up on those issues when those entities come before us. Yeah, however, those that were received on time, like the BBI Annual Report and its legal matters, will be able to proceed with that and other items on the agenda as scheduled. So if you missed that point, that was the only point. It's about documentation. But of course, there was explanation needed, given that it would appear that this has been to and fro for some time at an official level. Thank you. Otherwise, the acting DG can proceed as requested.
ADG?
Yes, apologies. I'm just trying to turn around the screen. A very good morning, Honorable Chair and Honorable members. This is Nonkobela Jordan Gianni speaking. Apologies that I can't switch on my camera at the moment. Chair, I will just have to fix the settings. Chair, I just want to pass an apology on behalf of the department for firstly the late submission of the emails, the late submission of the documents. The documents were actually submitted on Monday from the office. However, we are doing a SITA migration. The Cape Town office, I am made to understand, is only in the process of being migrated. So our systems are not as yet interoperable. But I know that the colleagues also tried to alternatively send to alternative email addresses, and it might have been missed, judging from the numerous correspondence back and forth. Chair, I'd like to therefore apologize on behalf of the department. We will rectify the situations going forward, and we will make sure that, as we had committed previously, that we submit the documents timelessly. Thank you. TM, and also I would also like to apologize also for them compromising the offices of the minister and the deputy minister.
Done, did you?
Yeah, I think the DG is done, Chair.
No, thank you, DG. We take it that indeed that commitment that this would not happen again, that it doesn't happen. And I think the message we are trying to send also is that for us to do our oversight work properly, we must have information that we process and we can, in that processing, prepare ourselves better, even from the content point of view, so that we are not just about getting the items through, but it will be because we've applied our minds on everything that comes before us. Honorable members, I do not want us to really belabor the point. I think there's been a response in that regard, and you can be comforted, Honorable Kola Barnett, that there are no members that may have had the documents and others didn't. So we suffer from the same. So it's all of us, and that's why this decision not to handle those. But with the other documents, we'll be able to proceed in this regard, as the committee support would flag the agenda as circulated. As you can see from the agenda, we are now meeting in terms of that draft, first term draft program. And of course, as we usually do, where there is a need to apply, to amend the agenda, given matters that may be of interest also in the public domain, we'll do that. However, the program is therefore presented as circulated to yourselves with the amendments made for your comments and for adoption as a living document, like we usually say. Therefore, beef it up as we move. May I then get, if there are comments, or at least move for adoption of the program, so that we get to the other item. You'll also help me to look at the hands in case I don't see the hand. Can we get a mover for adoption of the program with the clarity given?
Chair, I move.
Lala moves. Can I have a second?
I second, Chair.
Honorable Kum seconds. Is that Honorable Tlego?
Morning, Chair. I was to second also. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Tlego. May I just check if there's any objection in us adopting this first term program of the committee? So no objections, and the program is agreed to. Would then, without further waste of time, go to the next item on the agenda. Please play the agenda again. The second item relates to the finalization of the South African Postbank Limited Amendment Bill 22-2022. The guidance I have, honorable members, would then I have no intentions of removing people on the platform, but I'm only begging you now that please ensure you are muted, as the background sounds are causing problems for us. Participants, please. So as we proceed, as I said, we are now on that item. In terms of the guidance given, would be that we have the legal team. Mr. Boyle, please mute. I have no intentions of removing you from the platform so early. Please mute so that it allows the meeting to proceed smoothly, please. Can we all ensure, all those that are on the platform, that you keep your mic muted and your video camera off? So on this item, honorable members, as you know, we would have dealt with this item. We dealt with the list. We're then on the B list and therefore could not finalize the matter as it went back to CREDA. We will then be asking the legal people to first deal with the list, which is a matter, I take it, that has been agreed between our legal department of parliament as well as the state law advisor on how they are going to approach that part. And then once that is done, we'll then get to the B part, go through the clauses for adoption, not in the way we dealt with the A list. That's the guidance I have, and then get to the actual report that the committee has received for adoption and sending this to the House. May I then invite Ms. Ganjan and Swan Asfahan, they would be able to guide from here. But you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning, Chairperson, and to all on the platform this morning. Chairperson, as indicated by Hugh, at our very last meeting, we were not in a position to present the finalized A list due to time issues and further amendments that need to be made. Chairperson, just with regards to the finalized A list, I just want to say at the outset that the changes that have been made to the A list are not substantive changes. They don't relate to content. They're primarily grammatical and stylistic, and just in terms of the drafting style. So I just want to say that at the outset. My colleagues from the State Law Advisor and the department are on the platform this morning. If they do need to add anything at any stage, they can do so. I propose to take the committee through the final A list. If I may ask the committee secretary to flight the final A list, please. And then, Chair, if I may, with your permission, switch off my video.
Yes, please proceed. We can hear you at least.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Ms. Dangan, can you see the presentation?
No, Hajira, I can see your list of matters, but the A list, if you want to, I can, if you just enable the sharing, I'm happy to do it.
I've given you co-host rights, Ms. Gangan.
Okay, Hajira, are you able to see my screen?
I can see your screen, Ms. Gangan. Thank you.
Okay, I will proceed. This is the final amendments to the A list. So this is our final A list. I'm going to just read the headings until I get to the changes. Republic of South Africa, Portfolio Committee Amendments to South African Postbank Limited Amendment Bill, B12 of 2022, as agreed by the Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies, National Assembly, B12A 2022. The amendments agreed to South African Postbank Limited Amendment Bill, B12 2022. Number 1, Clause 1. On page 2, after line 5, we've inserted the following definition. A, by the insertion before the definition of Banks Act of the following definition. Banking services means the services rendered in the course of the business of a bank as contemplated in the Banks Act. 2, on page 2, in line 23, to place company in bold and at the end of the paragraph D, to delete the word and. On page 2, after line 23, to insert the following paragraph. F, by the insertion after definition of a family member of the following definition. Financial services has the meaning ascribed to it in Section 3 of the Financial Sector Regulation Act 2017, Act number 9 of 2017. Clause 2, number 1, on page 3, in line 9, after financial, to delete the word and to insert the word services. 2, on page 3, in line 14, to omit paragraph D and to substitute with the following paragraph D by the substitution for paragraph F of the following paragraph. F, ensuring responsible lending to rural and lower income markets, open brackets, full stop, close brackets, semicolon, and close brackets, semicolon, and inverted commas. Number 3, on page 3 in line 17, after financial, to insert the word services. Clause 3, number 1, on page 3, from line 36 to omit paragraph D and to substitute with the following paragraph. D, the minister shall consider and approve any other shareholding with the concurrence of the Minister of Finance and in accordance with the requirements of the Banks Act, the Companies Act, the Financial Sector Regulation Act 2017, Act number 9 of 2017. On page 3, in line 38, to underline the full stop at the end of the sentence. Number 3, on page 3, from line 44, to omit the phrase, the South African Postbank SOC Limited, and to substitute the phrase with the South African Postbank SOC Limited. Number 4, on page 3, line 47, to omit the phrase South African Postbank SOC Limited, and to substitute with the phrase the South African Postbank SOC Limited. On page 4, in line 5, to omit the phrase South African Postbank SOC Limited and to substitute with the phrase the South African Postbank SOC Limited. Clause 5, on page 4, from line 29, to omit paragraph B and to substitute with the following paragraph. By the addition after subsection 2 of the following subsections. 3, the members of the board of the company and of the bank controlling company are appointed or reappointed by the minister in a manner contemplated in section 14 and in accordance with the requirements of the Banks Act. 4, the board of the bank controlling company is made up of 10 non-executive members, 50% of which are appointed by the minister from amongst the board of the company. The minister must determine who the 50% board members contemplated in subsection 4 are, and chapter 4 of the Act applies mutus mutandis to the board of the bank controlling company. Excuse me. On page 5, in line 21, to omit members and to substitute with member. Clause 9. On page 5, in line 40, to omit the word in and to substitute the word for. On page 5, in line 45, to omit the word the from the phrase ensure that the. On page 5, in line 46, to omit meet and to substitute with meets. Clause 12, on page 7, in line 14, to insert a space after the number 12. On page 7, from lines 42 to 43, to underline the phrase and bank controlling company. Clause 16, on page 8, in line 16, to underline the word applicable. Clause 17, on page 9, in line 7, to delete the semicolon between the words government and through. On page 9, in line 10, to underline the word connected. Clause 18, on page 9, in line 30, to omit and. On page 9, after line 30, to insert the following paragraph F by the substitution for the expression 23, inspection of financial accounts and documents of a company of the following expression. 23, inspection of financial accounts and documents of company and bank controlling company. And on page 9, in line 31, to omit paragraph number F and to substitute with paragraph number G. On page 9, in line 33, to place 28, the number 28 in bold. Proposed amendments to the memo on objects of the South African Postbank Limited Amendment Bill. Number 1, on page 12, in line, on page 12, in line 1 of the first paragraph, to insert in bold 3.1, clause 1. On page 2, my apologies, on page 12, in paragraph 3.2.1, in line 4, to omit banking and financial services and to substitute with financial and banking services. Number 3, on page 12, after paragraph 3.2.2, to insert the following paragraph, 3.2.3. Clause 2 further seeks to amend section 2F of the Act to provide for the objective of responsible lending to rural and lower income markets. Number 4, on page 12, in paragraph 3.3.2, in line 4, after the expression Banks Act, A, to insert a comma and to omit the expression and the, and after the expression Companies Act, to delete the full stop and to insert the expression and the Financial Sector Regulation Act 2017, Act number 9 of 2017. On page 12, in paragraph 3.3.3, from line 1, to omit the phrase the South African Postbank SOC Limited and to substitute the phrase with the South African Postbank SOC Limited. On page 13, to omit paragraph 3.5.2 and substitute with the following paragraph, 3.5.2, section 10 of the Act is also amended to provide that the members of the board of the company and of the bank controlling company are to be appointed or reappointed by the minister in the same manner contemplated in section 14 of the Act and in accordance with the requirements of the Banks Act. The board of the bank controlling company is made up of 10 non-executive members, 50% of which are appointed by the minister from among the board of the company. Number 7, on page 14, in paragraph 3.12.2 in line 5, to omit the word board and to substitute with the word board, capital letter B. Number 8, on page 14, in paragraph 3.12.2 in line 7, to omit the word board and to substitute with the word board, capital letter B. Number 9, on page 15 in paragraph 3.17, in line 2, to omit the and to substitute with the, capital T. Chairperson, that is the final A list. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Gangan, apologies, Chair. Ms. Gangan, could you stop sharing, please?
I just check first if there are any comments from members before we get to the B part. Honorable Kolabanat, are recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies. Going through this, I would have a need to familiarize myself with the Companies Act and all the relevant financial regulations and legislation that is referred to in this document, none of which anyone on this committee seems to have any expertise or knowledge of. I don't know if anyone's here. I don't think anyone on this committee has worked in the Finance Committee. But it's, I feel as though we're drawing up a bill driven by officials, because I don't feel there's expertise to actually truly give learned input from our perspective on financial services, on the legislation, etc. It is so far out of our purview. I'm just at an absolute loss when it comes to this, and having to take inevitable, be trained, as it were, quickly by my colleagues on the Finance Committee. It's a most peculiar situation that we're having to deal with this. Should we not have given to us copies of all the relevant legislation referred to in this, so we can sit and study the relevant issues that are dealt with on a daily basis by the Finance Committee?
Any other member would want to comment?
Chair?
Yes, Honorable Mlala.
No, Chair, I think we have gone through this process for quite some time. And from my view, I think these were just few amendments that were needed to be done by the legal team. And from where I'm sitting, I think that's the reason why we have them. So we can all, as committee members, be legal experts and economists. That's why we have such people to help us. So from where I'm sitting, I think we must commend them. They've done a good job. At least there's progress. What I'm interested in is progress. We can't be sitting on one document forever. At least there's progress. Now I appreciate the progress made, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Mlala. I think you've made the point in a way that helps to clarify some of the points raised by Honorable Kolabanat. Indeed, making reference to the different acts also present an opportunity for us to learn more. But as already said in the outset, the matters were just cosmetic in a way, typo and style and all that, not really the content as discussed in previous meetings. and maybe just to lay this point to rest, that the Finance Committee that gets mentioned all the time has been met by this committee, and they would have agreed to the same, that this is the matter before this committee. And this is how far we have gone now with the matter. And we do know that our scope is clear. We are dealing with structures, not the lines and sets and all that, structures, and we should be able to get this done in that sense. We don't have to make another referral to another committee that Parliament has not referred the matter to. So those matters were clarified with the meeting on finance. Of course, we noted at that time the uneasiness that other members have just from a point of principle about the bank, creation of a state bank. So that's where the difference is, so that we would not spend time on it unnecessarily. So if there are no comments from other members, I would understand to move to the other part, which is the B part. So may I just confirm again the guidance that was given from legal side?
Chairperson, legal indicated that from here on in, you can go close by through the bill. We can start with a short title here, Chair, on this first page, and then move to this part, the long title as well. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. This is what I wanted to check. My understanding would be that because we have read the clause by clause, of course, I'll deal with the short titles and that, but when you get to the page by page, it will be to check if members agree with such a clause and move to the next one without doing the same thing we did when we were dealing with the A part. So that's the clarity I wanted, so that we do it as expected. Ms. Kanjan?
Thank you, Chairperson. My apologies for interrupting. I just wanted to ask whether it would be okay to just invite my colleagues to comment if they wish to do so from the department and from the State Law Advisor's Office. If there is anything that they feel they need to add, there may not be, but I thought I would just provide them with the opportunity. Thank you, Chairperson.
No, thanks for that intervention. When I didn't see any hand, I thought everybody is fine, but it may be because it was members. So maybe let's deal with that aspect. Any comment from the State Law Advisor, then followed by the department.
Good morning, Chairperson, and to all on the platform. I'm from the State Law Advisor's Office. It's Dr. Chania. Chairperson, we have no further comments further to what the Parliamentary Law Advisor has mentioned previously. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Might just check the department.
Good morning, Chairperson and the honorable members. I am Mohamed Ashel and representing the department on this matter. Chairperson, I wish to confirm that we have worked through these changes with the State Law Advisors and the Financial Legal section, and we have no further comments. Thank you very much.
Chairperson.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Honorable members would now go to the B part. This is a South African Postbank Limited Amendment Bill as amended by the Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies in the National Assembly. Of course, this is the English text in the official bill, which has, of course, the bill would have emanated from the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, B12B, 2022. Just a general explanatory notes. You would see that. Then we get to the bill. Intention of the bill is to amend the South African Postbank Limited Act 2010 so as to amend and insert certain definitions, to amend the objects of the Act, to provide for the transfer in the shareholding from the South African Post Office SOC Limited to government, and the creation of a bank controlling company called the Postbank SOC Limited in terms of the Banks Act 1990, to provide for the appointment of the Chief Executive Officer and the Chief Financial Officer, and to provide for the matters connected therewith. That be enacted by the Parliament of the Republic of South Africa as follows. Then started the amendment of Section 1 of Act 9 of 2010 as amended by Section 1 of the Act 4 of 2013, and Section 1 as you would see it, honorable members, from A up to G. May I just check, like I asked for guidance on this, may I just check if the members are with the amendments as inserted now on the first section. On A, under 1, on B, C, D, E, F, G. That would represent Section 1 amendment. Is that agreed?
Silence means agreed, Chair.
I want to be sure, Honorable Mlala, that you are still all awake. I take it that Honorable Mlala moves that we agree to that and get a second on Section 1.
I second, Chair.
And
That's Honorable Kombu. I just check if there's an objection or the cause to amend further. We'll now move to section, Honorable Kolabanet.
Beg your pardon, I pushed the wrong thing first. Yeah, Chair, when you call for objections, ours will be lodged at the end. But you know, each time you call for objections for each page, please just note our absolute objection throughout. Thank you.
Okay, that makes it a bit easier. Honorable Kolabanet would note it as such and therefore proceed to amendment of Section 2 of the Act 9 of 2010. Section 2 of the Principal Act is hereby amended, and those amendments are reflected in A, B, C, D, and E. May I just again check If that's agreed in the same way, mover and seconder, of course, noting the objection.
I second, Chair.
Honorable Mlala moves. Can I get seconded to Honorable Mlala?
I second, Chair.
Is that Honorable Dr. Basop?
That's correct.
Yes, I want us correct noting there. On amendment of Section 3 of the Act 9 of 2010 as amended by Section 2 of the Act 44 of 2013, Section 3 of the Principal Act is hereby amended as reflected in A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Noting that objection raised, can I get again over seconder that we proceed to the next one?
I move, Chair.
Honorable Umbumus,
I second, Chair.
Lala seconds, and then move to the next. Amendment of Section 9 of Act 9 of 2010, as amended by Section 5 of the Act 44 of 2013, now at Section 4, Section 9 of the Principal Act is hereby amended by subsection in the subsection 2 for paragraph A of the following paragraph, as you see it, that paragraph A. Can I get mover and seconder? So to move to the next.
I move, Chair.
Dr. Person, can I get seconder? Does a mover? Can I get a seconder to move to the next?
I second, Chair.
Honorable Lala seconds. We now move to amendment of Section 10 of Act 9 of 2010, Section 5. Section 10 of the Principal Act is hereby amended, as you'd see at A. We've got B as the amendments. Can I get again, noting the objection, the mover?
I move, Chair.
Lala. Can I get seconder? So
I second, Chair.
Couple of seconds. We now move to amendment of Section 12 of Act 9 of 2010, 6. Section 12 of the Principal Act is hereby amended, as you see, A, B, C, D, and E. Noting that objection, can I then get a mover and seconder so as to get to the next point?
I move, Chair.
Honorable Kombu, Bose,
I second.
Honorable Mlala seconds. We now move to the amendment of Section 14 of Act 9 of 2010, as amended by Section 7 of Act 44 of 2013. Section 14 of the Principal Act is hereby amended as reflected in A, B, C, D, and E. Can I get a mover and seconder for us to move to the next?
I move, Chair.
Honorable Lala moves. Can I get a seconder?
I second, Chair.
Honorable sub-seconds. We can make it quicker. Now move to session of Section 15, capital letter A in Act 9 of 2010, which is now Amendment to 8. The following sections hereby inserted in the Principal Act after Section 15, which talks to the functions of bank controlling company. And as you see, the capital letter there, 15A, subsection 1, 2, 3, and 4. Can I get again mover and seconder to move to the next?
I move, Chair.
Honorable Kumbu moves. Can I get a seconder?
I second, Chair.
Honorable Mlal seconds. We now move to amendment of section 18 of Act 9 of 2010 as amended by section 9 of Act 44 of 2013. Under that section 9. Section 18 of the Principal Act is hereby amended as stated in A, subsection B, subsection C, and D. Can I also then get mover and seconder to move?
I move, Chair.
Honorable Dr. So moves. Can I get a seconder?
I second, Chair.
Honorable Kum seconds. We now move to amendment of section 19 of Act 9 of 2010, section 10. Section 19 of Principal Act is hereby amended as reflected in A, B, C, D, E, and F with the subsections there that are put. Can we get mover and seconder, noting the objection?
I move, Chair.
Honorable moves. Can I get seconder? Can I get a seconder?
I second, Chair. It's Honorable Kubega.
Kubega seconds. We now move to amendment of section 20 of Act 9 of 2010. There's now section 11. Section 20 of the Principal Act is hereby amended as reflected in A and B. Can I then get a mover and seconder noting the objection?
I move, Chair.
Honorable Kumbo moves. Can I get a seconder?
Second, Chair.
Some seconds, and that takes us to the next session of section 20 capital A in Act 9 of 2010 and Act 12. The following sections hereby inserted in the Principal Act after section 20, which is about the bank controlling company's organizational structure. As you see, 20 capital letter A. I note at this point that Honorable Machozi is indicating network challenges that she's experiencing, may not, and therefore may not hear us properly as seen on the platform. But can we now get the mover and second for us to move to the next?
I move, Chair.
Honorable Mlala moves. Can I get a seconder?
Honorable Kubega, second.
Honorable Kubeka seconds. We now move to the amendment of section 22 of Act 9 of 2010 and 13. Section 22 of the Principal Act is hereby amended as stipulated in section A, B, and C. Mover, seconder, as we get to the next. Having noted the objection.
I move, Chair.
Honorable Kumbo moves. Got a seconder.
Second, Chair.
Honorable Kumbo seconds. Amendment of section 23 of Act 9 of 2010. 14, the following section is hereby substituted for section 23 of the Principal Act, which is about inspection of financial accounts and documents of company and bank controlling company. That's 23. I then present it to yourselves. Can I get a mover, seconder?
I move, Chair.
Lord Mlala moves, seconder.
Second, Chair.
Seconds, amendment of section 24 of Act 9 of 2010. Under 15, the following section is hereby substituted for section 34 of the Principal Act and the application of Public Finance Management Act as in the 24. May I get a mover and seconder, having noted the objection?
I move, Chair.
Honorable Mlala moves. Can I get a seconder?
Second,
I
Chair.
second, Chair.
Is that Honorable Kubeka?
Yes, Chair.
All right, Honorable Kubeka seconds. We now move to amendment of section 20 of Act 9 of 2010, number 16. Section 28 of the Principal Act is hereby amended as reflected in A, D, E, sorry, on D with those subsections in Roman figures. We then get a mover and seconder. I do not know who is not muted. I can't see from this side, but please make sure that you are muted as this is now a bit of a distraction.
I move, Chair.
So there's a mover, Honorable Mlala. Can I get a seconder?
I second, Chair.
Honorable Kum seconds. Amendment of long title of Act 9 of 2010, under 17. The following long title is hereby substituted for the long title of the Principal Act as stated. Can I get a mover and seconder?
I move, Chair.
Honorable Dr. Basot moves. Can I get a seconder, having noted the objection?
Honorable Gubega, second.
Kubeka seconds. Then we get to the amendment of arrangement of sections in the Act 9 of 2010, it's under 18. Arrangement of sections after the long title of the Principal Act is hereby amended as reflected in A, in B, in C, in D, in E, in F, and G. Can I then get a mover and seconder before we move to the next?
I move, Chair.
Honorable Gumbo moves. Can I get a seconder?
I second, Chair.
Honorable seconds. We now get to the substitution of the title of the Act 9 of 2010, which is under 19. The short title is hereby substituted for the short title of the Principal Act, short title and commencement, which will reflect as 32. May I just check again the mover?
I move, Chair.
Honorable Mlala moves. Can I get a seconder? Noting the objection. For record, I need the seconder.
I second, Chair.
Honorable Gumbo seconds. Then that takes us to the amendment on the short title and commencement, which is under 20. As you can see there, this act is called the South African Postbank Limited Act 2022 and comes into operation on a date fixed by the President, published in the Gazette. Let's do again formality noting the objection on that matter. Can we get mover and seconder?
I move, Chair.
Thank you. Having done so, I'll just check again because we handled a list differently in terms of the part of the memorandum objects. If we can get just legal advice on that, now that matter is handled, having gone through the actual amendments.
Chairperson, I would say that we go through the memo and just adopt it as well, Chair, but you can check with legal as well.
Yes, that's how I was checking with legal, Shira, on the basis of how the list one was dealt with, so that we also just do the same. Went through the list and they dealt with the memo and explained the rationale. Legal.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yes, Chairperson, we can literally just go through the memorandum as we did with the A list. Would you like me to proceed? I will. Thank you, Chair. Memorandum on objects of the bill of the South African Postbank Limited Amendment Bill 2022. Background: the South African Postbank Limited Act 2010, Act 9 of 2010, that the Act provides for the incorporation of the Postbank Division of South African Post Office, SAPO, as a separate legal entity, the transfer of the enterprise of that division to the Postbank Company, the governance and functions of the Postbank Company, and matters connected therewith. The Postbank Company was accordingly incorporated and registered with the Companies and Intellectual Property Commission on the 19th of April 2017 as the South African Postbank SOC Limited. The incorporation of the Postbank Company as a separate legal entity has been critical to enable the actual application to the South African Reserve Bank, SARB, for a full banking license in terms of the Banks Act. This enabled the actual lodgement of the actual banking license application. The actual banking license application is being adjudicated by the SARB. From the onset, the banking license application process has been prolonged in nature with rigorous and stringent outlined administrative compliance and regulatory requirements from the SARB that had to be complied with throughout. All the SARB requirements have been complied with, and there have been two main challenges to the compliance. Main challenges are: one, the previous legislative conflict which prevented state-owned entities from being eligible to apply for the registration with SARB as either banks or bank controlling companies, BCCs, and two, the SAPO group not meeting the BCC structure requirements. The first challenge has been addressed through the amendment to the Banks Act 1990, Act number 94 of 1990, the Banks Act, as contained in the Financial Matters Amendment Act 2019, Act number 18 of 2019. The Banks Act is currently applicable to national state-owned companies as well. The only remaining challenge relates to the BCC structure, which is being addressed through the current proposed amendments to the Act. Section 43(1) of the Banks Act provides for a public company that intends to exercise control over any bank and reads as follows: application for registration as a controlling company. 43(1), subject to Section 42, a public company A that intends to exercise control over any bank, or B, which is a holding company as defined in Section 1 of the Companies Act, in respect of any other public company which is applied in terms of Section 16 for registration as a bank, shall apply to the authority on the form prescribed or registration as a controlling company in respect of that bank or proposed bank as the case may be. 2, an application referred to in subsection 1 shall be accompanied by such information and documents as may be prescribed. 3, a public company applying in terms of subsection 1 for registration as a controlling company shall submit such additional particulars in connection with its application as the authority may require. The BCC is accordingly required to be registered in terms of Section 43(1) of the Banks Act to exercise control over Postbank. The BCC is required as a shareholder of reference for capital adequacy and in terms of compliance and submission of the statutory monthly returns as stipulated in the Banks Act regulations and circulars. The implication is that the BCC will step in to recapitalize and support a subsidiary bank if it runs into financial difficulties. One of the key requirements is that the BCC must be in a financially sound position in terms of Section 44(2)(e) of the Banks Act. However, Section 3.2 of the Act states that upon the incorporation of the Postbank company, SAPO shall be the sole member and shareholder of the company. This implies that SAPO needs to be registered as a BCC for Postbank. The current challenge with SAPO is that although its operations stabilized after the prolonged crippling strike of 2014, the entity is not yet profitable. It is therefore currently not in a financial sound position to meet the requirements for registration as a BCC. There are therefore risks that in its current form, very high capital adequacy requirements would be required if SAPO were to be the direct shareholder of Postbank. Excuse me. Both the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies, the Department, and National Treasury, in consultation with SAPO and the SARB, held numerous engagements to mitigate and find an optimal alternative structure that will comply with the requirements of the Banks Act. The alternative BCC structure proposed by National Treasury was eventually agreed upon by the two respective ministers, wherein the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies will now become the sole owner and shareholder of Postbank and its BCC. The ownership of Postbank is removed completely from SAPO. This is to mitigate against the above-mentioned risks associated with the structure envisaged in the Postbank Act, which makes SAPO the sole owner and shareholder of the Postbank. The option selected was the most viable and cost-effective to mitigate against the risk that government will be obliged to provide ongoing support to SAPO in order to maintain the structure of the SAPO group as the result of the ownership of the bank. SAPO's non-banking services, corroborated by the current financial position, poses a threat to the safeguarding of depositors' funds. The separation will enable direct focus on both entities, SAPO and Postbank, in terms of the exact capex requirements for each without being distorted by non-core businesses. It's also worth noting that in terms of the bill, there's nothing preventing SAPO from being reconsidered for shareholding or part thereof in future should the financial situation change to the point of meeting the requirements of the Banks Act. The implementation of the agreed alternative BCC structure resulted in the department proposing amendments to the Act in the bill. The proposed amendments are necessary to meet the Section 43 requirements of the Banks Act, which would require that the Postbank BCC will have to be incorporated in terms of the Companies Act 2008, Act number 71 of 2008, the Companies Act, for it to apply as the national state-owned entity that will exercise control over the bank in terms of the Banks Act. The submission of the Section 43 application to SARB is the final step in the Postbank's licensing application for it to be considered having complied fully with all the requirements as stipulated in the Banks Act. Objects of the bill. The objects of the bill are to amend so as to substitute and insert certain definitions to adjust the establishment and shareholding arrangements for the Postbank through the creation of a new bank controlling company, BCC, to facilitate its establishment and registration as a BCC in terms of the Banks Act, and to provide for matters connecting therewith. Summary of the bill. Clause 1 seeks to amend Section 1 of the Act. It provides that definitions contained in the bill are amended or inserted for a better understanding and interpretation relating to additional clauses. Clause 2 seeks to amend Section 2 of the Act. This clause provides for the amendment of Section 2 by removing the words legal person and replace it with company and bank controlling company, and by deleting transactional and replacing it with financial services and banking services. This is to ensure better use of the language and interpretation of the Act. Clause 2 also seeks to amend Section 2B of the Act after the words post office to insert the words any other means of delivery the company may deem appropriate for its operational needs. This amendment seeks to give Postbank operational flexibility in terms of the means of delivery of services to avoid solely depending on the SAPO infrastructure. Postbank shall also be able to take advantage of the fintech opportunities. Clause 2 further seeks to amend Section 2F of the Act to provide the objective of responsible lending to rural and lower income markets. Clause 2 further provides for the amendment of Section 2 of the Act by the addition of paragraph G, which provides a further object of the Act for the Postbank division of the Post Office to act as the delivery arm of government to effectively deliver financial and payment services to citizens. The amendment seeks to expand on the objectives of the Postbank, the insertion of the new paragraph G in Section 2 of the Act seeks to distinguish the Postbank from the normal banks, as the Postbank shall be a state-owned commercial bank conducting the business of a bank, as defined in the Banks Act. This shall ensure the Postbank shall act as the delivery arm of government to effectively deliver financial and payment services to citizens. Clause 3 provides for the amendment of Section 3 of the Act to ensure the establishment of the BCC of the Banks Act. Clause 3 further provides for the amendment of Section 3 of the Act to allow the Minister to consider and approve any shareholding with the concurrence of the Minister of Finance and in line with the requirements of the Banks Act, Companies Act, and the Financial Sector Regulation Act 2017, Act number 9 of 2017. Clause 3 further provides for the name of the BCC as the South African Postbank SSC Limited, and that no other person other than that the Postbank may carry on any business or registered with that name. Clause 3 further provides that for the amendment of Section 3 of the Act to provide that the BCC will hold 100% shares in the company on behalf of the government representing the Minister, and that the BCC will exercise oversight over the bank and ensures that the company exercises sound risk management and governance practices in line with the Banks Act and its regulations. It also provides for the Minister to apply to register the BCC in accordance with Section 43 of the Banks Act. Clause 4 provides for the amendment of Section 9 of the Act by the insertion of paragraph G in subsection 1 to provide that the company may use any infrastructure to render its services where the post office is not available or does not cater for its operational needs. Clause 4 further provides for the substitution of Section 9(2)(a) of the Act to provide that the company, the BCC, and the Post Office must, with the concurrence of the Minister, conclude an agreement which governs cooperation between the company, the BCC, and the Post Office. Clause 5 provides for the amendment of Section 10 of the Act to provide that the Minister appoints or reappoints the members of the board with the concurrence of the Minister of Finance. The concurrence of the Minister of Finance shall be deemed to have been granted should such response not be forthcoming within 30 days from receipt of the request. Section 10 of the Act is also amended to provide that the members of the board of the company and of the bank controlling company are to be appointed or reappointed by the Minister in the same manner as contemplated in Section 14 of the Act and in accordance with the requirements of the Banks Act. The board of the bank controlling company is made up of 10 non-executive members, 50% of which are appointed by the Minister from among the board of the company. Clause 6 provides for the amendment of Section 12 of the Act, which provides for the composition of the board. This amendment seeks to ensure that when the members of the board are appointed, they are fit and proper persons in terms of the Banks Act. Clause 6 provides for the amendment of Section 12(1)(c) by replacing the words Managing Director with the words Chief Executive Officer and Chief Financial Officer, who are the executive members of the board by virtue of the office that they hold. Clause 7 provides for the amendment of Section 14 of the Act to delete reference to the Post Office, as it will no longer be the controlling company of the Postbank. Clause 8 provides for the insertion of Section 15(a) into the Act to provide for the functions of the BCC. In terms of this clause, the BCC will be the controlling company of the Postbank. The provision further provides for the BCC to exercise additional oversight over Postbank and to ensure that bank operating company exercises sound risk management and governance practices in line with the SARB requirements of the Banks Act and its regulations. Excuse me. Clause 9 provides for the amendment of Section 18 of the Act to provide for the substitution of the words Managing Director with the words Chief Executive Officer and Chief Financial Officer, respectively. Section 18 of the Act is further amended to provide for the appointment in terms of office of the Acting Chief Executive Officer and Chief Financial Officer by the Board. Clause 10 provides for the amendment of section 19 of the Act to provide for the substitution of the words managing director with the words chief executive officer and chief financial officer in the heading of the section and in the subsections of section 19 of the Act. This is to ensure that the conditions of employment for chief executive officer and chief financial officer are also catered for. Section 19 is further amended to ensure the process in the appointment of the chief financial officer, the requirement to conclude performance agreements with the board, and determination of the chief financial officer's remuneration by the board with the concurrence of the minister. Clause 11 provides for the amendment of section 20 of the Act to provide for the substitution of managing director with chief executive officer to ensure consistency. This section is amended to further provide for the appointment of the acting chief executive officer and the chief financial officer by the board. Clause 12 provides for the insertion of section 20A into the Act to provide for the organizational structure and the operations of the BCC, which shall consist primarily of compliance, risk management, and governance functions. The section also provides for the board to remain responsible for ensuring that it is, that its approved strategy is implemented and that the group's purpose is fulfilled. The board shall also accept responsibility to ensure that risks are adequately identified, measured, managed, and monitored, and that good governance is maintained, and that the board shall discharge its duty through policies and frameworks supported by the board's committees. This section further provides for the board committees to be established in line with the Companies Act, the Banks Act, and the Public Finance Management Act. Clause 13 provides for the amendment of section 22 of the Act to include BCC and also to provide for the funds of the BCC in section 22 of the Act. Clause 14 provides for the amendment of section 23 of the Act to insert that the BCC shall also furnish to the minister or to such officer as the case may be all such information as may reasonably be required. Clause 15 provides for the amendment of section 24 of the Act to ensure that the BCC is also subject to the Public Finance Management Act. Clause 16 provides for the amendment of section 28 to allow the minister to request the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition exemption from certain provisions of the Companies Act applicable to the company or to the BCC for purposes of ensuring incorporation of the two companies and the conditions under which exemptions to the company and the controlling company can be granted. Clause 17 provides for the amendment to the long title of the Act to include establishment and shareholding arrangements for the South African Postbank SSC Limited through the creation of a BCC in terms of the Banks Act. Clause 18 provides for amendments to the arrangements of sections in the Act. Clause 19 provides for the amendment of the short title of the Act to include reference to the abbreviation SOC as required in terms of the Companies Act. Clause 20 provides for the short title and commencement of the South African Postbank Limited Amendment Act 2022. The department bodies, persons consulted. The following stakeholders were consulted: Postbank, the South African Post Office, SAPO, and National Treasury. Financial implications for the state. It is vital to take cognizance of the fact that the Postbank is not being established from scratch as a bank, but it has been an existing division with SAPO from the onset and was later incorporated as a 100% subsidiary of SAPO. Postbank has been relying on SAPO as the parent company to provide services. As a parent company, SAPO has been responsible for its establishment. The complete removal from SAPO, which is required to give effect to the BCC structure in line with the banking license application requirements, have direct financial implications for SAPO. This is given that, apart from the implied decline in the net asset value of the parent SAPO, brought about by the separation of the Postbank subsidiary from the SAPO group, there is implied restructuring of the SAPO business. Some proper due diligence would have to be done to compensate SAPO on the goodwill owed to them over the Postbank establishment in the form of recapitalization. This is critical to cater for the cost of restructuring, unbundling of SAPO, given the imminent separation or unbundling of the Postbank from the group. The department has been working with National Treasury to find a workable solution. National Treasury have submitted that they have considered the fiscal risks that the different BCC structure options presented. As such, Treasury asserted that the costing of the restructuring of SAPO will need to be fed into the budget process, considering the impact of the unbundling on the solvency of SAPO. In view of this, the request for financial support to mitigate against the financial impact of Postbank separation is being facilitated through the MTF funding request processes. Parliamentary procedure. The department and the state law advisors are of the opinion that this bill must be dealt with in accordance with the procedure established by Section 75 of the Constitution, since it contains no provision to which procedure set out in Section 74, 76 of the Constitution applies. The Constitution prescribes the classification of bills and therefore correctly classified, otherwise it will be constitutionally out of order. We have considered the bill against the provisions of the Constitution relating to the tagging of bills and against the functional areas listed in Schedule 4, functional areas of concurrent national and provincial competence, and Schedule 5, functional areas of exclusive provincial legislative competence to the Constitution. For the purposes of tagging, the constitutional court case of Tongwane and others versus Minister of Agriculture and Land Affairs confirmed the substantial measure test indicated in ex parte President of the Republic of South Africa in reconstitutionality of the liquor bill. The test entails that any bill whose provisions in a substantial measure falls within a specific schedule must be classified in terms of that schedule. In terms of Section 76(3) of the Constitution, a bill must be dealt with in accordance with the procedure established either in subsection 1 or 2 of it, if it falls within its functional area listed in Schedule 4 to the Constitution. The issue to be determined is whether the clauses in the bill in a substantial measure fall within a functional area listed in Schedule 4 to the Constitution. The bill mainly seeks to amend the Act to substitute and insert certain definitions therein, to adjust the establishment and shareholding arrangements for the South African Postbank SOC Limited through the creation of a BCC to provide for the establishment and registration of the BCC in terms of the Banks Act and to provide for matters connected therewith. The proposed amendments have been examined to establish whether in a substantial measure they fall within any of the functional areas listed in Schedule 4 to the Constitution. In our view, the subject matter of the bill, which is the establishment of the BCC, does not in a substantial measure fall within any of the functional areas listed in Schedule 4 or 5 to the Constitution, and it does not affect provinces whereby the procedure set out in 76 of the Constitution will be applicable. We are of the opinion that since this bill is an ordinary bill not affecting provinces, and that it must be dealt with in accordance with the procedure set out in Section 75 of the Constitution. Referral to National House of Traditional and Khoisan Leaders. State law advisors of the opinion that it is not necessary to refer the latest bill to the National House of Traditional and Khoisan Leaders in terms of Section 39(1)(a) of the Traditional and Khoisan Leadership Act 2019, Act 3 of 2019, since it does not contain provisions pertaining to traditional or Khoisan communities or pertaining to customary law, any customs or traditions of or Khoisan communities, or pertaining to any matter referred to in Section 154(2) of the Constitution. Thank you, Chairperson.
Is it, honorable members? I just ask if there's any clarities you would want to get first before getting to adopt the member. I take it that when there's no point raised, this agreement on explanations given in the memorandum.
Chairperson,
Am I the one who's lost?
we can hear you now, Chair.
Okay. No, as I said, I wanted to check if there are comments from members or any matter that need clarified on the memorandum before we get to the report of the committee to be adopted by the committee. Honorable members, I take it that you agree, we then move to report. As we thank the legal section and state law advisor, but maybe if I may just do this part that I've dealt with members and check if there's any matter on the side of the department. Shalembe, just to check if you are well covered, even on the memo, in terms of explanations given.
Chairperson, we are covered. Thank you very much.
Thank you. With that having been said, I'll now invite the committee support staff to share the report that has been sent through to members. And I take it that members have had an opportunity of going through the report. You will then be able to indicate if there's any matter you want to raise as we go through the report. We're now on the page where the title starts, report of the Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies on the South African Postbank Amendment Bill, brackets B22, 2022, report dated 17th February 2023, which is for today's adoption. We'll now proceed then as the committee support scrolls through for members to make comments. I think the report captures the sense of our discussions and the approach. In particular, 13 keeps that balance in terms of how we have looked at approval. We'll take it that Honorable Kola Barnett had already raised that anything to do with this part, the objection should be noted. I take it that also, as we look at the adoption of the committee report in line with 13, can I now invite those that would want to move for adoption of the report and a seconder in that regard, having noted the objection?
I move, Chair.
That Honorable Gumbo moves that we adopt this committee report.
I second, Chair.
So, like I said, we note the objection that has been raised earlier, and therefore the report is agreed to. Will then be taking matters forward from here in terms of sending the report to the relevant structures of the House. Therefore, I will now go back, honorable members, like we said, as it relates to item 3, that will deal with the BBI report, which is the annual report as received, and only the outstanding legal matters of BBI as received, and all other reports as agreed will be dealt with as entities come before us. And of course, we would have no reason to keep everybody who's not participating on this matter on the platform. It will be really their election to stay on. I'm going to focus on the BBI, and on all others as ruled earlier on will then be dealt with as we having you appearing for the committee. Without a waste of time, Deputy Minister and team, I will now be coming back to you as we usually do, to allow you to make your overview, which gives you an opportunity to also put the committee of national interest, public interest, and also how to approach the presentation. The members have received this presentation, so we'll really look at it is not more than 40 minutes, which takes into account your overview, department inputs, as well as the presentation from the entity. So that will be like 40 minutes in total. So when you are done, at least they'll start counting the remainder of the time to get to the 40 minutes. And as I say, I'm doing so because members, at least on this one, had an opportunity going through it. Deputy Minister, I hope able to hear me.
Yes, Chair, I am. I think I would proceed, Chair.
Yes, Deputy Minister, can proceed.
All right, thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you to all the honorable members on the platform, honorable members of Parliament. And shall I say, compliments of the new season, Chair, since we are meeting for the first time this year. Since we last had an engagement last year, on behalf of the ministry, to wish you all the best in the new year as you navigate your role as providing oversight to ourselves as the ministry, to the department, as well as to the entire portfolio of communications and digital technologies. Chair, you will be considering the annual report of BBI, for which you were supposed to consider last year, but there was a delay in the tabling of the annual report, which delay was communicated to both
Minister, I'm not sure. Deputy Minister, I'm not sure it's on my side.
ultimately the annual.
It's not to be.
To all of us, Chair.
Yes, Deputy Minister, we really struggle to hear you. I'm not sure if probably you switched off your video camera, whether this would improve, but I really struggled to hear you. So I thought maybe it's on my side.
Yeah, Chair, I've
Now you're
got
better.
much.
You're better now.
Better now.
Let's see, but if you have that struggle, I would advise that probably you would switch off your video camera. So we lost what you were saying. You can proceed, yeah.
No, Chair, I was. Am I audible now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. No, Chair, I thought I was saying that maybe we should take this opportunity to, send our condolences once more on the passing of the former chairperson of the board of BBI, Ms. Leah Kumalo, who passed on last year in November, and she was buried last year. We would like to send our condolences to the family and the loved ones and to the BBI itself. She had since been replaced by Ms. Zandi Kabini, who has been appointed as the chairperson of the board now, but also to inform the committee chair that the former CEO's term of office, Mr. Nduma, came to an end on the 15th of November last year, and Mr. Matseke, and there is a new CEO acting who has been appointed. I'm going to switch off the video, Chair, because it looks like it is affecting connectivity. So let me do that now. I think this should be fine. So,
Yes,
Chair, yes. Yeah, so I was talking about the former CEO who has since left the employ of the BBI after his 5-year fixed-term contract came to an end, Mr. Nduma. And the board has appointed Mr. Gift Zoa as the acting CEO until the process of the merger or the acquisition of the BBI has been finalized. As you know, Chairperson, following the presidential review on the SOEs, there was a decision that was taken to merge BBI and Centec. So that process has been underway. A couple of options have been looked at, and finally, it was agreed that the quickest route to follow is the process of acquisition by BBI by Centec of BBI, which process is almost nearing its completion. There's been a due diligence done by Centec to acquire BBI, and the report has since been finalized, has been presented to the minister. We had anticipated that this process was going to be finalized last year by the end of the calendar year in 2022, but unfortunately it took longer than we expected. We're still hoping that the process will be finalized by the end of this financial year, 30th of March this year. But some of the elements of the process has since been concluded. As we speak now, both the BBI and Centec share the same offices of BBI is relocated to be in the same offices as Centec, so that it can facilitate closer cooperation between the two entities. And so as a result of that, we will be awaiting the process of the final merger, and the decision will then be taken as to the appointment of the executives of the new entity. Maybe just to clarify, I'm sure that that question may come later. So currently, DCDT is a shareholder, but it's not the only shareholder. It's got about over 70% shareholding of BBI, and there's another shareholder, I think it's another state-owned entity, IDC, I think. So this process will require that Centec will acquire the stake that is held by the state through DCDT, which is 74%. And the rest of the shareholding will still be by the other entity, which is IDC. Maybe just to quickly speak to the financial performance. Well, let's start with just the other performance, and we'll go to the financial performance. So BBI has achieved 14 of the 19 targets, which translate into 74% for the year, which is almost the same as what was achieved in the previous financial year. There are 5 targets which have not been achieved, and I think the entity will elaborate as they go through their detailed report. We must say that we've been worried about the low cash flow levels that the entity has been experienced over time, which really is affecting the financial viability of the entity. We are happy that the shareholder loans have been converted into equity, and this is something that will allow the entity to go and approach the capital markets on the strength of the healthy balance sheet to raise some money there to invest in its operations. But that has not been done as of now. And so there are a number of creditors, in particular Telkom and Transnet, who have been whom we have been dealing with to try and resolve some of the issues that are resulting from the debt that is owed to them. So this has been escalated to the minister. Our minister is engaging with the Minister of Department of DPE, Public Enterprises, Honorable Minister Pravin Gordhan. So those discussions are taking place to try and resolve the outstanding debt, which is really crippling the performance of the entity. In terms of the financial performance, as I said, the entity is experiencing the cash flows. There's been a net loss almost of about 118 million. And so this is posing some serious material uncertainty regarding the going concern status of the company, which is a matter that I say is currently being dealt with. We are trying to work with the entity to see how we can raise this funding. But of course, the merger or the acquisition by Centec, I think, will help so that it can create that kind of stability at the at the governance level so that we can then be able to approach the financial markets to get this necessary funding so that BBI can be able to invest on its networks to attract and service more customers. The Auditor General's report, the entity has received an unqualified audit opinion with some matters of emphasis, which basically speaks to the going concern status which I've spoken to about the BBI. Lastly, Chair, we are rolling out the broadband policy as we've always known it of SA Connect Phase 2. We're mainly doing that using BBI. So BBI is the implementing agent of the department on this project, and much work has been done. We're quite satisfied with the progress that has been made in connecting South Africa. As you know, that we would like to connect the 80% of South Africa in the next 3 years. We are going ahead with that process. We've received the necessary funding for that. And so it's important for us, for BBI, to continue to be a going concern so that it can help us with its expertise to roll out this broadband connectivity and connect the unconnected in the far-flung areas of our country. With that, Chair, I would like to pause at this stage and allow BBI to take you through their detailed presentation, which I believe has been shared with yourself. Thank you, Chair. Can I invite the BBI? Maybe the Chair, just to introduction, and the CEO's, acting CEO Gift can quickly take us through the details of the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, dear. Please proceed.
Thank you, DM, and good morning, Chairperson and honorable members. My name is Zandile Kabini, the Chairperson of the Board. Our presentation is divided into 4 parts. I'm going to take the committee through the summary of the annual report for the FY 2021-22. Starting with the highlights of the reporting period, as the DM has indicated, that the company achieved 14 out of 19 targets, which represents 74% achievement rate. And out of the 5 targets that were not met, 4 of them are related to financial sustainability, and only 1 relates to socioeconomic transformation. And eventually, the company received an unqualified audit outcome with findings that we are currently addressing. The issue of going concern status remains an ongoing challenge as the company is financially unstable, and as a result, it's unable to meet its obligations. So in the meantime, or in the current financial year, there are issues that we are resolving. The first one is access to funding, whereby we continuously engage with the shareholder to identify means of accessing funding. And this funding is required for network and fiber route upgrades, as well as settling our debts with Eskom and Transnet. The second issue that we are currently addressing is around network expansion, which is core to our business. And the purpose of this network expansion is to basically increase capacity on strategic high demand routes and also unlock bottlenecks on the network. The third issue that we are addressing in the current financial year is around expansion of service offerings through partnerships and various collaborations. And we have embarked on a process of partnering or insourcing small, medium enterprises in some of the underprivileged areas in which SA Connect is going to be rolled out, especially SA Connect Phase 2. The third issue that we are addressing is around the Eskom and Transnet debt. And this issue remains a concern. And as a result, various funding streams are being explored. And at this stage, I'm happy to report that there are interventions made by the shareholder to ensure that access to funding in order to improve the cash flow status of the company and ultimately settle the Eskom and Transnet debts. Some of the funding avenues that the shareholder has accessed are from USASA, as well as the Broadband Access Fund, which is part of the Presidential Employment Stimulus. The other issue is to normalize our relationship with Eskom because that was broken. And we are engaging with Eskom at various levels, executive authority as the DM has indicated, accounting authority level as well as executive level, so that we can ensure that common ground is achieved on crucial matters, especially the settlement of the Eskom debt. And the same approach is applicable for Transnet. So in terms of our ability to fill critical vacancies, as you've noticed that we've got an acting CEO and interim CFO. So the positions of the CEO and CFO are not filled on a permanent basis due to moratorium, as well as the acquisition of BBI by Centec, as well as the impact that filling of these vacancies on a permanent basis can have on the future organizational structure. However, as an interim solution, these critical positions are filled on a fixed term basis with the approval of the minister. And as a result, due to this moratorium, BBI has opted for the outsourcing approach, which is between 6 to 12 months contracts to ensure that performance objectives and targets are achieved. And this is also applicable to other executive level positions like general managers, supply chain management, and chief sales and marketing officer. In terms of the audit findings, the board continued to exercise its oversight role to ensure that all audit findings are sufficiently addressed. And lastly, in terms of the issues that we are addressing in the current financial year, the issue of elimination of irregular expenditure, which is common to most of the state-owned entities. The board continues to emphasize that management ensure appropriate steps are taken to prevent irregular expenditure, as this is required by PFMA. As I indicated, Chairperson, that there are various interventions by the shareholder in order to ensure that the cash flow situation in BBI is improved. I made reference to the USASA fund. I also made reference to the Broadband Access Fund. There is also the SA Connect Phase 2 fund, which is in the pipeline. So with regard to the last section of my summary, which is the future outlook, what is key for the committee to note is the SOC rationalization. And I'm happy to report that as BBI, the board as well as executive management, we continuously collaborate with Centec to ensure the completion of the acquisition process. Chairperson, if you allow me, can I hand over to the CEO to take us through the rest of the presentation? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning, Honorable Chair, and good morning, honorable members. My name is Gift Zowa. I'll be taking you through the rest of the presentation. I have shown my face earlier on, but for purposes of bandwidth, I'll just continue in this format. Okay. On the next slide, I will not go into all the basic details that some of you might already know about. Safe to say on this slide that we do have a commercial mandate to enable and stimulate competition within the ICT industry, which I think has happened quite a lot since the inception of Broadband Infraco, and also to increase investment in the ICT infrastructure. Some of you might know that Broadband Infraco, through the collaboration with the state-owned entities Transnet and Eskom, has got the second highest number of kilometers of fiber of long distance. And so it helps that there is Telkom, there is Eskom, there is Broadband Infraco, allowing that there is sufficient fiber in the market in order to drive down the price of communication. Together with the commercial mandate, we also have the social mandate, where we have to provide communication services, affordable communication services to all areas, with a special emphasis on the underdeveloped and underserviced areas. And as you can imagine, this is where a lot of our resources are also spent, and some of those areas are not addressed properly by the rest of the market because they are not commercially viable. But Broadband Infraco has got that mandate to go there and provide those communication services, which is also why we end up having to work with the department, the shareholder, for the SA Connect project in order to provide those same services to the people that were left out. The slide that I'm showing now is a snapshot of the performance of the organization across various metrics for the past 5 years. The Deputy Minister and the Chair have already spoken about the 74% achievement of the shareholder compact, which we hope to improve on in this current financial year that we are operating in. But from the previous years, and you can look at the various inputs, whether it's the ISO 9000 certification, or whether it's the number of customers that we're looking at, or the BE level and the positive EBITDA across the financial years, you can compare how we have been performing. For the financial year that we are talking about, we already spoke earlier on about 5 targets that were not met. And I'll talk about those. These are the ones with the red arrow, which is going down. So the first one would be the target of sales. We managed to get 323 million new sales contracts against a target of 400. So this one was not met. And then on the revenue, we managed to have 5% year-on-year decline against a target of 36% increase. Then on the gearing ratio, we got a 136% debt to equity against a target of 107. The green arrows are what we achieved. I will not overemphasize on that because we need to focus on where we can improve. On the operating profit, we got a decline of 69 million against a target of 37 million. Then if we proceed, the 5th target was that we did not meet the BEE level 4, which it was not maintained. We were supposed to maintain that. Those are the areas where we are focusing on to make sure that we improve our performance and so on. The rest of the other metrics, whether it's the empowerment of SMMEs or empowerment of women and so on, BE spend, corporate social responsibility, we have managed to meet all those, and we continue to meet them even in this current financial year. So in total then, this shows you out of the 19 KPIs, 14 achieved, 5 not achieved, and among others, the training spend, we achieved on that, and the targets for SOC rationalization, which talks to Centec acquiring Broadband Infraco, the targets, we achieved them. We are well on our way to meeting that. And then we got an unqualified audit opinion, which was maintained from previous years. The other targets, briefly to touch on them, is the SA Connect sites. I'll briefly show a slide on that. We previously connected 713 sites across 8 provinces. These sites are to provide connectivity to schools and to clinics and so on. We have had to maintain these sites to make sure that services continue to be provided and nothing goes derelict. So it's a target that is crucial, because what we don't want to do is to make 4 steps forward and 5 steps back. Once we have connected, we intend to make sure that those people stay connected.
And then we've got internal targets as well, which measure our performance in terms of responding to network faults and the penalties that we pay if we don't meet targets for our clients. We have met all those targets. So talking of the SA Connect, we have connected 713 in these provinces, as you can see. And in each of those provinces, we've connected schools and clinics, and the map can show you there. These were the sites that we had to maintain and make sure that we provide equipment, people, vehicles, and infrastructure to continue providing at 10 megabits per second for each of those entities. In terms of the infrastructure that we have, this is just a snapshot to give you an idea of where we are and how much we have. The number that you see below each of the provinces is the kilometers of fiber that we have in each of the provinces. So in Gauteng, we've got 1,461, for example. In the Eastern Cape, we've got 1,864, and so it goes. Then in terms of the POPs, where our equipment is, and in some cases, we co-locate that equipment with Eskom, and in some cases with Transnet, in some cases it's our own. So we have got those POPs, points of presence, 9 of them in the Northwest, 27 in the Northern Cape, and so it goes. This is our infrastructure. Then talking about the annual financial statements, we have also given a summary earlier on via the chairperson and the deputy minister. But in summary, our assets decreased by 42 million across the board, and we have put in a 5-year performance histogram, so you'll be able to compare over the years. And the cash decreased from 88 million to 27 million cash in the bank. We are happy that the shareholders' loan was converted to equity, which resulted in positive net equity in the past 2 financial years, and hence should make it easy for us to go and get funding from the commercial banks for us to continue with operations. The non-current liabilities decreased by just about 2.3%. And here on the graphs of equity and liability, you will see that we're becoming positive in terms of equity. Then on the revenue, these are some of the KPIs that we did not meet, which I spoke about earlier on. It decreased in the current financial year by 5% year on year, and the cost of sales increased by 9% year on year, mostly because of the matters that we're dealing with, whether it was load shedding, which caused us to have to drive longer distances all the time, or have to drive with the generators, the mobile generators, and buy diesel and so on. And then the operational expenses as a result also increased 10% year on year, among others. The operational loss increased by 3 million. And you would be able to track all these details in this last column for the year 2022. And then talking of talking of the audited results in terms of irregular expenditure, we had an opening balance of 56 million, and we ended up with 93 million carried forward from the previous years and so on. Some of these come from us utilizing services without a contract. For example, if you utilize the services from Eskom, which is an essential service for us, if we cut it off, then there is no more communication services that we can provide. But we would also be reliant on Eskom to sign on their side for us to have a contract in the first place. So some of those come from that, especially if you look at them. Continuing with irregular, I think then we end up at a total of 93 million, and we are in the process of requesting condonation for the irregular expenditure of the previous years that has also been reported to this committee. New irregular expenditure relates to TFR, where there were no contract extensions done and National Treasury reviews that as irregular. Even if it's essential and you cannot do anything about it, still
if there is no contract that has been signed on time and you continue to consume those services, then it becomes irregular. In terms of audit findings, we have got 16 that we are dealing with. We've been tracking for the past 5 years, as you can see. We're going to have a key focus on the property, plant and equipment. Some of this is coming through because we have not had sufficient resources to focus on that. By virtue of the area that we operate in, we continuously losing some of our expertise, and it becomes difficult to retain or to attract. And so we need to focus on some of the personnel that would ordinarily cause some of these external audit findings. Then on the future outlook, we intend to stabilize our network and mobilize our businesses so that we strengthen our financial position, ready for growth and sustainability, even as we become part and parcel of Centec. And we intend to provide more last mile connectivity, especially in the underserviced areas, and become the preferred partner of government in enabling digital transformation in the schools and the health facilities, government precincts, working together with other state-owned companies and together with the private sector. One of the key ethos that we follow is that we should not duplicate any infrastructure. Wherever we go, we use what is available, be it private, be it state-owned. And even as we design the network for the next phase of providing services, the starting point is always to engage all operators and all government entities that have got infrastructure. So that's how we also drive down the cost to communicate for those areas. So we're looking at the network upgrades strategy so that we increase the capacity. I think the chair has talked about that. We increase the capacity in the network. We have seen that we are no longer talking of 1 gig, 10 gig and so on, but multiples of hundreds of gigs that are required, especially for a wholesale business like ours, where we have to be selling huge chunks to the enterprise market and to the MNOs and so on. So we need that for redundancy as well as for direct customer provisioning so that we protect our network across the board to improve the performance. And so the network upgrade strategy focuses on that, on making the network scalable, both from an infrastructure perspective, so that if one leg of the link goes down, operations still continue, as well as from a capacity bandwidth perspective, so that whatever consumption or demand that comes through the upgrade via 5G and so on, we are able to carry it through for our clients. And as a result, we've identified more than 1 billion of critical investment in infrastructure that we need to carry out over the next 4 years. And this we are putting in our corporate plan and in our strategy as well. Obviously, the funding becomes key to that. And we've already spoken about the fact that the department has given very good support to BBI in changing the shareholder loans to equity, and also in providing some of the funding that is required for the projects of national interest that will be running with. We do have an opportunity to grow our wholesale market share. This is coming from independent people that have done that. We have got a good opportunity to continue to be sustainable if we get the investment, the network upgrade strategy investment in infrastructure all right, especially when we work in collaboration with other entities that have got infrastructure. And so we are looking at that investment rationale, of which part of it would be to provide services to the neighboring countries. We already have some links. They need to be strengthened so that the services are more reliable, as well as providing more capacity to them, capacity on demand. We have got very good relationships with the operators of those countries, and we continue to get more and more opportunities from them. We are a part of the Southern African Telecoms Association, where all of us get together and look at common problems and potential solutions that we can work on. So the BBI projects that we're going to focus on are for revenue generation and revenue protection as well. And a funding structure which is backed by these types of thoughts and processes is the most appropriate for the company. And that is going to improve our balance sheet going forward and protect our cash flows from the reliable clients that we currently have. And we continue to work on that strategy, which we're going to present to the department very soon. I think I will end there, Chair, so we can take pointed questions on these matters. Thank you.
Chairperson, I think that sums up the presentation from our side. Over to you.
Thank you, GM, and the BBI team, as led by both Chair and acting CEO. Honorable members, we will then take hands for those members who would want to interact with the presentation. So I will now note hands. I will start with the Honorable Gumbo, followed by Honorable Kola Barnett. If I'm leaving any hand, you'll then indicate. Honorable members will then be followed by Honorable Bojani in that order, and then I'll take the other hands. The Honorable Gumbo, you are recognized. Can proceed.
Thank you, Chair. And greetings to the Deputy Minister and everyone in the meeting. And let me appreciate the presentation made. Chair, just one quick question. I just want to get a sense, Chair, of as to when this process of merging BBI and Centec can be concluded, Chair. Thank you.
Honorable Kolabanat, you are now recognized, can proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Just two questions from my side. If the performance, and it does look to be, was really quite exceptional over the past 5 years, what pushed for this decision to have this entity absorbed, shall we say, by Centec? And I do see the losses made, but I mean, that's almost standard procedure for all the entities in this that fall under this ministry. But what was the tipping point, and how's it going to be improved if it simply falls under another entity? And then also a question from my side is that I see large numbers of schools and clinics connected, but it's in all but the two most populous provinces, Gauteng and the Western Cape, where there seem to be zero. Why was there no progress in relation to those two provinces, and what is the plan going forward in this regard? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Kolabanat. Now recognize the Honorable Bojani.
Good day, Chairperson, and good day to colleagues. Thank you so much, Chairperson. Chairperson, I don't think I have seen anywhere where it relates to the actual amount of the telecom debt that was spoken about this morning. Unless I missed it, it would be interesting to actually have the figure, as it were. And for me, I would actually like to ask, what the biggest challenge has been with the measure where we've seen the date changing. What has been the biggest challenge, and how likely are we to meet the 31st of March deadline? And I say this because the presenters both spoke about how we are, how there's a need for funding so that the entity can meet its mandate, and what has been the impact on the delay in the measure on the market. Because with my little understanding, if the measure is happening and there is a sense in the market that it's a viable way to look at at merging the two entities, there shouldn't be an issue really of having an appetite from the market. So mine is to say, how likely are we to meet that deadline, and will it in any way change the interest in the market? When the time is right, Chairperson, I think it would be prudent for us to really be brought on board in terms of how the organogram of the new measure is going to look like. Because I'm sitting here wondering if people will have to reapply for their jobs. We've just had new people coming in on BBI. What would that mean when you merge the two entities? So when the time is right, Chairperson, I think we should request the entity to come through and explain to us what the organogram is going to look like. Essentially, the HR processes. I have asked before what this measure is going to mean. Is there going to be job losses? Are we going to restructure positions? So that would be a welcome presentation. Chairperson, lastly, the more the presenters speak, the more I realize and worry about their infrastructure. We are in a situation where load shedding is really wreaking havoc, and where already they are reporting a loss of 3 million. How has load shedding impacted their infrastructure, and what ways are they putting in place to mitigate the damage to the infrastructure because of load shedding? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Olani. I will then recognize other hands in the second round, including follow-ups, but let's just take responses at this point. Deputy Minister and the team, you would be able to indicate how you would want to approach responses, whether you'll come in first or you'll just do the stop.
Okay, Chair, I'll come in last. Let me allow the team members to come first. The Chair and the CEO, and then I'll come last.
Okay. Please proceed to respond.
Okay, I will start. It's gift, so I will start with some of the questions. The ones related to the major process when concluded, I will leave that to either Centec or the department. And then the one from Honorable Member Diana Kola-Barnett about the need. Why was there a need for the merger, especially if in many cases there's been exceptional performance by BBI? I will also leave that because that is a view that comes from the shareholders and so on. Safe to say that there are certain synergies that work very well together between Broadband Infraco and Centec in terms of providing end-to-end services. So Broadband Infraco works very strongly in providing a fiber network, fixed infrastructure, and so on. And Centec works very well with wireless solutions, among others. And so if you get the two together, you would be able to have a market segment that you can service across the whole value chain without dividing in between and having different suppliers. So in terms of strategic fit, definitely there is between Centec and Broadband Infraco for providing wholesale services and so on. Then when it comes to the schools and clinics which are connected for all the provinces except Gauteng and Western Cape, I think, and the department can add here, at that time, the biggest requirement was to look at the most unconnected areas. As you can imagine, Gauteng and Western Cape, they are the most connected. They're the economic hubs of the country. So we were looking at a pilot of providing connection for the rural areas, for the schools that are the most disadvantaged at that time. And I say it's a pilot because we connected 713 out of a possible 20,000, because that is the budget that was available. It was scaled down at some stage. But going forward, especially for SA Connect Phase 2, all provinces are catered for. And we're now not only looking at schools, clinics, but we're looking at community centers, traditional authority centers, government precincts. Every single entity that needs communication services will be provided starting from April. And we start across the board and not leave any province out of that. The numbers can be shared later on by the department in terms of how many sites, how many entities, and who is connecting, whether it is the State Digital Infrastructure Company, which is the merged entity between BBI and Centec, or whether it is CETA, or in fact, even the telcos as part of their social obligation. So all those details will be provided at a later stage. And then in terms of the amount of debt that we owe to Eskom, at this stage, I don't have the exact figure in rands and cents, but it's about 150 million plus minus. That is the figure that we are looking at. The exact rands and cents, we will be able to confirm it later if required. On the organogram, what it looks like, I will leave that. I know it's work in progress. We are working very well closely together with Centec and the department, but it will be a determination of the department going forward. I don't know if there's anything I left out for the colleagues to come through. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. For Chair, is there any additions to make before we give to the department?
Chairperson, there are no additions from my side. I think the CEO has covered everything. Thank you.
So the department and then the Deputy Minister would ask.
Chairperson, maybe let me come in and deal with the question relating to, excuse me, to the rationale for the measure. I would wish to remind the fellow community that as way back as 2013, there was a presidential committee on SOE reform. And that committee, amongst other things, was very important to identify that there is a large number of SOEs just by themselves. And some of these SOEs were not doing well. They were very weak financially and strategically. And therefore proposed that there be an element of rationalization of the entity. So we looked into our portfolio and identified entities where there are synergies, as the CEO of BBI has just indicated, where we could merge them and then create what we call a broadband champion, or a bigger company that is able to not only play in the domestic broadband sector, but also service the surrounding neighborhood country. So the idea really is to create a stronger and more formidable SOE dealing with a broadband issue without neglecting the original business of Centec, which is signal distribution, which has its own synergistic relationship with the fiber business of BBI. So the idea again then is that these entities, once combined, they will not have the reliability on the fiscals for funding. They will be able to generate their own funding through the project that they will run and the customers that they will be able to enroll. As having been indicated, BBI has already been instructed to serve as the implementing agent of the Department for SA Economy. And in that way, it is going to earn itself out of its financial difficulties, critical revenues that are required to bring about sustainability. And the other issue was about what is the timeline for the merger? Are we in line to finalize the merger by the end of the financial year? Chairperson, I think Centec is also on the platform. They can also come in. They have just concluded the due diligence, which has been submitted to the minister, and have then proposed the signing of a share sale or share transfer agreement from the minister to Centec. We are still in consultation with the legal advisor as to whether there is sufficient basis then for this deal to be consummated without necessitating any amendments to the law at this stage. Our view, as supported by the state law advisor at the time of starting this process, was that this could be done exclusively in terms of the Companies Act, since both entities are registered in terms of the Companies Act. And if necessary, only at a later stage, we need to do the amendment to any of the laws governing the entity. Therefore, we are still hopeful that at least on paper, the transaction could have been finalized by the end of the financial year, with perhaps then the post-transactional integration taking place after the end of March 2023.
Okay, maybe let me just come in. I don't know whether Centec would like to comment. As someone is also on the platform.
Yes, Chairperson, thank you very much, DM. Maybe just to confirm what Mr. Shelembe has indicated, the process is targeted to be consummated, if you like, by the end of this financial year. So the department and the ministry are assisting with that process to be at least officially signed off by the end of the financial year. We've done the due diligence and we've presented the reports or submitted the reports to the department and the ministry. It is our intention to conclude this as soon as possible because of the nature of uncertainty that it brings to both organizations. So we believe we're on track, and I think we will be able to report maybe some progress in the next presentation to the committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, CEO. If there's no any further additions, maybe let me just come in. I think the question on the merger, which was asked by Honorable Kolabana, has been sufficiently responded to by DDD Shilembe, which is a point that I wanted to come to. Just to say that this was arising from that review, presidential review on the state-owned entities. So this is part of implementing those recommendations, and that's why this measure was identified as responded to by Mr. Shilembe. I think the issue of the SA Connect, I think it's important to make a distinction that there was a phase one, which was more of a pilot, which just connected around 1,000 sites, which was a collaboration between BBI, CETA, was involved. I think to some extent Centec, but BBI and CETA were the main entities that were utilized to implement phase one of the SA Connect, which was more of a pilot. And now what is happening as a result of this revised model of SA Connect phase 2, we are going full steam in implementing phase 2, which is a much more expanded program than the pilot one that happened some years back. And so the model that Cabinet had approved is such that is the model where we will work with the other partners, in particular the mobile network operators, through the obligations that has been imposed as part of the spectrum auctioning process, where we are working with them to finalize the public facilities where they will be responsible for connecting the schools, the clinics, the traditional authority sites, and so forth, which largely is going to be done through their partnership. And then on the side of the department, through BBI, we will then have to do the community connectivity, among others through the Wi-Fi hotspots and so forth. So we have started with this process as it was reported, mainly partnering with USASA and concluding some of the sites that USASA was supposed to do. So there are two projects. The one was a pilot where it was targeted to certain areas. The other one was doing full steam of connecting the entire country. I think it's important to make that distinction. And as to the merger, I think honorable members will remember that we came to the committee on several occasions where we were still at the brainstorming stage, where we're looking at different ways of merging the two entities. The initial thought, I think as members would remember, was for BBI to acquire Centec because of the strength of the legislation governing BBI. At that point, that was the idea. So, and we could not proceed with that. Various options were explored. And the one that was to be more efficient and deliver quick results was to utilize the Companies Act, which is what the department is following through now, to utilize the Companies Act to allow one of the entities to acquire another one. And in this instance, given the strength of Centec, then it was decided that Centec must then acquire BBI. And so the process has been done. Due diligence is there. It's on the table of the minister. And so all the outstanding actions will then have to be finalized very soon. But at the end of the day, there will be a need to amend legislation governing both the entities, both BBI and Centec. And I think that we will still have to come to Parliament because we have to formally disestablish the BBI, because it's an entity that is a creation of a statute, of a legislation. So that legislation will have to be repealed so that we can make provision for the new entity. And so there's a thinking in the department to have a much bigger company, which we call the State Infrastructure Digital Company. So this merger will then allow us to build on that, to establish this company, which we think that it will play in the market and as part of the state-owned infrastructure company that will roll out broadband connectivity throughout the country, where it will also be able to generate its own revenue and so forth and so forth. Now, I'm not sure, because I think the issue of the difficulties that BBI is currently experiencing, I think it should be understood in its proper context. And I think various presentations were made in the past to this committee, where the state, through the department as a shareholder, capitalized this entity at its establishment, at its inception. And this capitalization was in the form of a loan that was given to the company to work. So there's been efforts to try and convert this loan, because this loan was sitting in the books of BBI, and as a result, BBI was not able to go to the financial markets. And there had been requests in the past for the state to recapitalize, to invest more in the building of the new fiber infrastructure and so forth. And as you know, that there were competing demands, and it was not possible at that stage for the state to continue to invest in that. So the idea of converting the shareholder loan into equity was to allow the entity to go into the market on the strength of its balance sheet, to get finance, to be able to invest, to get more customers, to refresh its networks and so forth. So it could not be done. So there was a lot of delay. And this is what has led to the sort of the not so good financial performance. That's why we're seeing the decline in the revenue of BBI and so forth. So it's as a result of that delay. But as we have said in the past, it has been sorted out. And the balance sheet looks better, but just on paper, of course. But this measure is something that will finally get a final solution to these financial difficulties that is being experienced by BBI. We hope that we have responded to all the questions, or there's one about whether this is going to result in any job losses. We do not think so. We think there is an opportunity in the market for the new entity to play in. And as we see it, there is no need for any of the employees of both entities to be laid off. Of course, as you match, especially in the senior management echelon, you might have to look at the new structure, how it deals with the fact that there will be 2 CEOs, 2 CFOs, and all of that. But I think it's a process of transition that can be managed in a better way without large-scale retrenchments or people being unemployed. That is our view for now, but of course we can't predict the final. But at a lower level, I don't anticipate any eventuality where people will lose their jobs, because they will still have to maintain the existing clients, the existing infrastructure, and all of that. So not much is going to change, and they will have to go and look for new opportunities in the fiber space. As you know, fiber is it's a new big thing now in terms of rolling out of connectivity. So, Chair, I think we have okay, in respect of the question of Honorable Gumbu, I think we're looking at the end of this financial year to finalize this process and to sign it off and to start seeing the new entity taking shape. Chair, thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. If I may just check with members if there are follow-up questions or new members who would want to ask questions. Or members are covered in terms of responses received. Am I still audible, members?
We can hear you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to be sure that I don't leave anyone behind as we get towards closure of the item. I wanted to check if there are follow-up questions or members who may have not asked questions earlier who would want to ask questions. Honorable Taigo, do you want to ask a question or you've unmuted Anaway? If that's the case, please mute. Honorable Taigo, please mute. You can help us mute Honorable Taigo. Thank you. Thank you. Given that there are no questions from honorable members, please, for purposes of communication, Deputy Minister, as well as the entity, I just want to be sure that my notes are correct. Is it an issue that at this point, you are still dealing with the shareholder acquisition by Centec of BBI, specifically the 74% held by the shareholder being the minister in this case, and that the two will coexist by the 31st, and that this is not, as previously presented, a creation at this point of one state digital infrastructure company. So I just want to be sure that I got that clear. And if that is the case, would then have to, I think at some point as the committee, be briefed in the coexistence of the two with that acquisition, how Centec that we know has a major client called the SABC and the problems that have been there with regard to payments, how that viability will still be sustained pending that creation of one state digital infrastructure company. But if that's not what you meant, please clarify. It's important that when we communicate post the portfolio committee, we can keep South Africans with a bit of clarity of exactly where we are. Maybe the second point really is, with all the matters raised and the need for the rollout, which is broader than just community facilities. With the experience of the revised budget, where the 200 billion came from and could not be spent because there were no internal arrangements, is the message to the country that we are now ready, including managing the partnerships, learning lessons from how USASA, Centec, and the department from the Auditor General point of view would have managed the implementation of set-top boxes, which attracted some audit queries, even for Centec that usually would have not had those matters before. So those are just clarities on my side, so as to be sure I understood well what's put up, and as the committee communicates post the portfolio committee meeting, can communicate that properly and know better on what to oversight on post these decisions that get made. So if you can respond to that as we get towards closure, with members having been satisfied with the responses.
Thank you, Chair, for the questions. I'm going to invite DDG Shelembe to speak to the first part of your question, which involve a lot of detail around what's whether there's going to be two entities or whether it's going to be one. But maybe just to foreground the response by saying that we have been looking at various means of achieving the same objective, which is to rationalize and to merge the two entities. So ultimately, the intention is to have one entity. So there were a number of options. One was legislative amendment, which was going to take a lot of time. The two was for one entity to acquire the other. As I said, initially it was BBI. And then later on, there was a decision which we thought that was going to provide the most quickest route of achieving this outcome of utilizing the Companies Act by having one entity acquiring another one. But the ultimate objective is to have one entity so that we can rationalize and ultimately utilize that to move over to the second phase where we have the State Digital Infrastructure Company. I think that is the idea behind the whole thing, and this is how it's going to pan out. But let me leave the detail to Mr. DDG Shelembe to speak to that, if you can do that quickly.
Thank you, PM. Yes, indeed. Let me just confirm that the creation of the SDIC, or the State Digital Infrastructure Company, is rather a longer-term project. So what we are going to be achieving by the end of the financial year is but the first step in the project, which includes or which entails the Centec taking over the 74% ownership of the Department of Government. Essentially, when that happens, BBI then becomes the subsidiary of Centec. That is what we will achieve by the end of the financial year. That then gives Centec and BBI an opportunity to work closely together to what we call the after deal integration of the two entities. And in that case now we will be building towards the integration of the two companies to form one company. I think one member was saying what is the organigram or the organizational structure of this entity. We are not there yet. We have not had that detailed discussion and sharing of information to allow for the proper structuring of the company to create one company. But the idea is indeed that we will move towards that arrangement post the acquisition. The SDIC again is envisaged not to end after the integration of the two companies. But when we went to cabinet, we said there are other state-owned entities which are not in the ICT sector, but which own fiber. And we said entities like Eskom, Transnet, PRASA, and Sandra, they all own fiber which they utilize for their own purposes, but they have excess capacity. And so we said that excess capacity can also be integrated into the FDIC, thus creating this bigger company that we have in mind, with a bigger reach and the bigger access to the communities that need to be served. So all in all, Chairperson, what I'm saying is that it is true, the initial stage of acquisition is the acquisition of the shareholding in BBI by Centec, which will be followed by an integration process after. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, DDG member. I think that is the detail of what we want to achieve, Chair. And I think these are steps on the way to having one entity existing, one company undertaking the mandate which was executed by two entities. But these are the steps of getting us there. As I said, we looked at what could be the quickest route for us to achieve that outcome. And for now, we're handling it through the Companies Act, as we have been advised by the state law advisors that it's possible for us to do this instead of going through the whole amendment, which may take about 36 months or so before it's finalized. But this is the quickest route for us to achieve that outcome. But as DDG Shlambe is saying, ultimately, there has to be one state digital infrastructure company, which will take on the elements of some of the things that are done by other entities. But we will utilize this as the base because we would have had one entity that on behalf of the state displaying in the market is just a question of consolidating the other responsibilities from the other SOEs. On the issue of, can't remember the second question, Chair, but it has to do with the fact that Centec, there is still a risk going forward for Centec to have as one of its biggest clients, the SABC, which I think both sides, from the side of the SABC and from the side of Centec. On the side of the SABC, I think we know that they have raised this matter. The matter is with the Competition Commission regarding the rates that is charged by Centec for signal distribution. So we are still awaiting the competition to finalize that process, which they are raising it as an issue. Even on the side of Centec, we know that the entity is trying to diversify its customers, its clients, so that it doesn't have to rely on one customer, which is the SABC. So that is an ongoing issue that the entity is looking at. And I think at an appropriate time, they will come and report to Parliament. But Centec is a going concern. Financially, it's in a healthy financial state. I think we've reported on their annual reports the fact that they still have some reserve to invest in their operations. So it's not really threatened in any way whatsoever, Chair. I'm not sure whether that was the question that you raised, Chairperson. But yeah, we don't think that this is going to pose some challenges in any way. The issue with the set-top boxes, I think it was the issue of reporting, Chair. So remember that the targets which were sitting in Centec, the target which was sitting in USASA, and the department, it was reported differently. And so the issue was, how do we then consolidate all this into one on the rollout of the set-top boxes? So I'm not sure, Chair, whether we have fully answered your question. I think you'll indicate if we have been able to do that. I must say the second one was a bit tricky, Chair, but yeah, it's over to you.
No, thank you. Thank you, DM. The intention was not to be tricky, but help South Africans there to understand the steps so that the expectations are the same. So when we get to that deadline, we shouldn't have different expectations of where we are and what is the next step. And as I said, that was the main for communication. I think there's better clarity, including reinforcing some of the questions that would have been asked and responded to. Now, in that score, honorable members, would really have to thank the Deputy Minister, the BBI and the team, as led by the department and their board CEO for the presentation and response to questions. And I think as we move forward, we would continue to keep an eye on the implementation of things as we go forward. So we really thank you for that, Deputy Minister, as we would get to the next item as a flight insurer, which is really more of a committee report. I have no intention of holding stage anyone who would want to be listed who is not participating in the item. So I would not keep you here, but if you elect to stay as we complete the meeting, so that would be it. Otherwise, we really appreciate that you came before the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. If you do allow, I'm going to be asked to be excused as to consider the next item. But thank you very much for having us here.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. Thank you. Honorable members, we now proceed to the report which was circulated to yourselves as it relates to deliberations on the Protector Report number 113. As you know, the other report was taken on review as reflected in the report. So we'll go through page by page as you have received the report, and you'll indicate the matter you want to indicate as we go through it. We're on the page on introduction and background now. We're now in the other page. We're now on the deliberations and what the committee resolved. Yes, as I indicated, it's shown there on 5 that the 114 report has been taken on review, therefore not part of this report. Can I then, in the absence of corrections that members would have raised, that we get a mover seconder? Can we get a mover and seconder?
Chair, I move for the adoption of the report.
Honorable Combo moves. Can I get a seconder? Can I get a seconder before I go and check if there are objections in us adopting the report? Honorable Gumbo has moved. Can I just check if other members are still on the platform? Or I'm the one who's out of the platform? Because I did a seconder.
I'll just double check.
Honorable members, can I get a seconder?
I think we lost Mr. Mulala, Chair. I'll just check for you.
Yeah, he said he's reconnecting, but there are other members on the platform.
Chair,
Yes, Honorable Kubeka.
I second the report from
The
Comrade
report is
Gumbo as he has moved.
Yes. Okay. We have a seconder for the report. Any objection? No objection, so the report is agreed to. We'll now take, I think it's the last item. Ajira.
Can you see the item, Chair?
Yes, honorable members, that's the minutes of the meeting of the 29th November. We will go through the minutes on the page by page, as we usually do, and then call for the mover after the corrections if there are any. That's the minutes, honorable members. Having not raised corrections, may I then get the mover and seconder for adoption of minutes?
I move, Chair.
Honorable Mlala moves. Can I get a second?
I second, Chair.
Honorable Gumbo seconds. Is there an objection in us adopting the minutes as true reflection of that meeting? No objection, so the minutes are adopted by the committee. So that would have been the last item, isn't it, Hachura?
That's correct, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable members, as this takes us to the end of the meeting, I just thought you should also be given a heads up on a request made by the Minister for the next meeting, that the matters to be addressed by the committee are similar matters that she would want to address with the NCOP, and therefore necessitates a discussion between chairpersons and the support teams to check the feasibility of having it as a joint meeting next week, Tuesday. So as for those matters to be addressed at a go. So that's one issue. The second issue is that given the challenges we continue to have about load shedding, connectivity, and so on, we've also mandated the committee support that even if we are unable to do so by Tuesday, that for the other meetings as adopted in the program that we adopted today, we are able to have, whether it's a hybrid committee room or the physical committee room, to allow members to attend physically, and in situations where we'll need presentations, that it could still be done virtually, hence the hybrid. But if that doesn't work, we'll look at those that are physical for our attendance. So I thought you should just keep that in mind, but there will be communication in that regard. On what point are you raising, Honorable Kolapanat?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think having a joint meeting is really a good idea. First of all, would that also be at a venue or virtual? And secondly, I think it's extremely important that we raise with the Minister the fact that she announced before or after the SONA out in the street that she had now appointed the CEO as the board. I mean, it's an extraordinary move. There is legislation that covers the SABC, and there's absolutely no provision for that. So that's something that has to be discussed. I have written to her and to the President and to the Minister of Finance, who is apparently involved, so she said, but I think it has to be discussed, and I think that would be the perfect opportunity. So thank you very much.
Okay, no, thank you, Honorable Kolapanat. Of course, as I've clarified, we'll check the hybrid committee room, but if we can't, we'll get the one that's only the physical attendance. So the hybrid room would be almost like the M46 where the inquiry is taking place, which allows both physical and virtual attendance. So that's the matter we'll look at. For other matters, I think we'll deal with them as the Minister would also come before the committee. Hajira, if that was the last item, this then takes us to the end of the meeting. So the business of today's meeting has been concluded, and the committee says adjourned until we meet again, honorable members. Thank you. Have a good weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson.